This is an extended demonstration of the key features of the TARN Analytics reporting tool. Further information and guidance is available on the resources page of the TARN website. To request a TARN Analytics account, please email support@tarn.ac.uk. Once you've logged into your TARN account, you can move to the navigation screen, where we show you all of the available reporting areas. We have a range of reporting areas looking at populations of patients as a whole. We then break down patients by different body area and then by other characteristics. The hospitals you have access to are listed across the top of the page. You can look for further information at any time by clicking on the Information button. We will start by looking at the Dashboard section. This screen shows your hospital's compliance with dashboard measures. We're currently viewing the Major Trauma Centre dashboard measures. If you want to view the Trauma Unit dashboard measures, you can do so by clicking on the TU Measures button. Your hospital's performance is demonstrated to you by the coloured bar, and the grey line shows you the national average or national target where there is one. If you hover your mouse over the chart, a pop-up appears to explain this in text. The date for selection for the dashboard screen is towards the left-hand side of the screen. You can see here we are selecting data for 2019 and quarters 3 and 4. Please note that the quarters for TARN Analytics are calendar year, so quarter 1 starts with January. This differs to the quarters for our published dashboard report. You can view data for any date period you're interested in simply by selecting the appropriate year and appropriate quarter. You can also combine date periods together by using the control button on your keyboard. Here I'm using the control button to add data from quarter 2. Move on to the next section by clicking the navigation button. We can move on to demographics. The date for selection for this page is towards the right-hand side of the screen. You can choose any date period you're interested in by clicking within the date button and choosing the appropriate date and year. The total number of submissions for the selected date period is shown to you, and then the number of direct admissions is identified. You're then shown the median length of stay and median injury severity score, or ISS, for this period. This group of patients is then broken down by injury mechanism, age and gender, injury severity score band, and most severely injured body region. You can drill down into these patients further by clicking on different demographic areas. So, for example, we can look for patients involved in a vehicle incident by selecting that area of the donut chart. I can then drill down further by selecting another factor. So if I click the control button on my keyboard, I can look specifically at those patients with an injury severity score of greater than 15. If you wish to view the different filters you've applied, you can do so by hovering your mouse over the filter icon, and they will appear to you. You can remove any filters you've applied by simply deselecting the filter. The next section of the demographics page is the incident map. Here we are shown incident locations plotted on a map. Please note, if the incident location is the same as the patient's postcode, this will not appear. And we break down these patients by most severely injured body region, injury mechanism, and injury severity score band. If we look at the trends screen, we can look at admissions over time, length of stay over time, and patient age over time. I can break these patients down into different groups further by looking at most severely injured body region, injury mechanism, and injury severity score band. If we click on the navigation page, we can look at the data quality screen. The date for selection again appears on the right-hand side of the page, and we demonstrate your case ascertainment and data accreditation scores. We also show you how many cases you submitted for this time period and how many we expected you to submit. If you'd like further information about case ascertainment and data accreditation, please watch our data quality video. Each of the data accreditation measures are listed across the main screen, and your hospital performance again is demonstrated to you by the coloured bar. If you click on the Show Patient List button, you can view your data accreditation scores for each of your patients. Here, each submission is listed on the table, complete with a link that will take you to that patient's submission on the TARN database. We then show you all of the data accreditation fields across the top of the table. Any fields where data is missing are highlighted to you in red. This clearly helps you see where you're missing out on key patient information. You can export this table to Excel by clicking on the 3 dots for more options and then clicking Export Data. This will allow you to save this data as an Excel spreadsheet. If we look at the TARN user activity section, we can view activity at your hospital. This includes the number of submissions dispatched to us per month, how many we return to you each month, and how many cases were rejected each month. Please note there are 2 different axes to this chart. The dispatched submissions is on the left-hand side of the chart, and the returned and rejected submissions are numbered on the right-hand side of the chart. If we move on by clicking the navigation screen and then selecting the outcome section, we're presented initially with the VLAD chart. This is variable life adjusted display. The aim of this graph is to show upward and downward trends quickly. If we view data for 2020, we can see that this line goes up and down over time. That depends on patient outcome. So where a patient survives, the line will go up. Where a patient dies, the line will go down. You can drill down by clicking on different date points and look at what was happening in your hospital on a specific day. In this example, we can see that the line on this chart has gone down significantly because this hospital has a patient who has died with a relatively high probability of survival. Again, you can use the link button to be taken directly to that patient's TARN submission. We break down your overall case ascertainment for the date period you're looking at, and also your survivor death ratio. You should aim to have a survivor death ratio of as close to 1 as possible, because that means you are submitting the correct proportion of deaths and survivors. If we look at the rate of survival section, hospital survival rate is plotted on a funnel plot. Your hospital will be identified to you by the red dot. All other hospitals are identified by grey dots. The 0 line across the middle is the TARN norm, the outcome we'd expect you to have. And if your hospital appears anywhere between the dashed green and orange lines, your performance is within the TARN norm. So you're performing as we'd expect you to. Hospitals identified outside the solid green and red lines are potential outlier hospitals. We do monitor outlier hospitals regularly, and if there is ever an issue or a concern with your hospital survival rate, we will contact you to discuss that. If we move on to navigation again and look at head and spinal injuries, we can view data for patients with those specific types of injuries. So we're currently looking at the demographics page for head injuries, and we can see a breakdown based on injury mechanism, age and gender, injury severity score bands, and GCS severity. So as before, we can drill down to look at specific groups of patients. In this example, we'll look at patients who've had a large fall, and I'll use the control button on my keyboard and look specifically at patients who have a GCS of less than 14 or 15. If we move on to the imaging and operations screen, we can look at time to CT, time to craniotomy, and time to ICP. We can then drill down further by looking at GCS groupings and age bands. If you wanted to review a particularly high time to CT, you can do so by clicking on that point. And here we see that that in fact represents one patient who had a time to CT of 3,821 minutes. If you want to look at further detail about that patient, you can do so by clicking on the Show Patient List button and then clicking the link button to be taken to the patient submission on the TARN database. If we move over to the navigation screen again, we can look at the patient pathway section. This section has three different screens. We have the imaging screen, the surgery screen, and the ward screen. If we start with the imaging screen, we can see a breakdown of the body area imaged, patient arrival time, injury mechanism, age band, and cumulative percentage time to imaging. To interpret the cumulative percentage time to imaging, we can hover over this chart and see that 50% of patients in this hospital were imaged within 79 minutes. 100% of patients were imaged within 358 minutes. If we move to look at the surgery screen, we can break patients down by body region operated on, arrival time, injury mechanism, surgery by age groups, and cumulative percentage time to surgery. And finally, the ward section. We can break patients down by the first ward they were admitted to, their length of stay in critical care and their overall length of stay, their discharge destination, injury mechanism, and age bands. So for example, you may wish to review patients who are discharged to rehabilitation. Do so by clicking on that part of the donut chart. And then you can view, for example, that their critical care length of stay is longer than that for patients overall, for example. If you have any questions about using TARN Analytics, please do get in touch with TARN support. And remember, we do have a guidance video and guidance documents available on the resources section of our website.